community, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if there was a special selection in making that, but I thought that was a nice title.
Yeah, Richard, it coincides well with, membership and the voice you can have through expanded participation, right? And the opportunities thereof. Agree.
So as I understand it, we're a bit of a smaller session today. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with my introduction. And while we're waiting, I'm Richard Klinger, Director of Network Engineering at Canary. We'll turn it over to Joe and Steve for your introductions.
Hi, and I'm Joe Westover. I'm Director of Customer Experience and Strategy at ARIN.
And I'm muted. I'm unmuted. I'm Steve Wallace, and I'm Director of Routing Integrity for Internet 2.
We're okay. Maybe we can move ahead, Victoria, and I'll introduce our webinar recording policy, which is that the session will be recorded and made publicly available. I think importantly for folks that speak French, at the bottom you'll find a way to switch from English to French, as we have live interpreters making that happen for us. And that the chat is not recorded, but of course anything that's like audio participation would likely make it in. We can advance more. Thanks. Well, okay, so I like this slide a lot, actually. Canary does a lot more than network, but as a member of the small but mighty network team, I of course love to introduce Canary as the Canadian National Research and Education Network, which is built through partnership across 13 provinces and territories. Together, we connect Canada's researchers, educators, and innovators to each other and across the globe. We can advance, please, Victoria. Yeah. So Canary and lots of the folks that have been in webinars and in our working groups have worked with ARIN to build a more secure routing environment. And ARIN's wonderful. They're wonderful to work with. It's been a great experience. And our collaboration has helped to ensure networks associated with the research and education community are protected against potential threats and vulnerabilities, with a focus on building a robust and secure infrastructure. And over the past year, many of the institutions on this call have collaborated with ARIN too, working to establish and update services agreements and route origin authorizations. Likely you've already experienced this firsthand, that ARIN values the relationship with our community. And I hate sounding like hokey or preachy, but I think this is important. It's an important opportunity to get involved. The alternative is potentially to allow private interests to dictate ARIN's policy. And to me, that's worrying because our community's voice is very important. RPKI conversation for many of us has started a relationship with ARIN, and I hope that we continue to take this opportunity to grow and get involved. And pass it over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Richard. First of all, I want to thank Canary for hosting the webinar and for ARIN attending it and telling us how to be better voices within that community. So Internet 2 is also a national research education backbone, and like Canary, Internet 2 does more than just networking. We consider ourselves a community that does a variety of things, including high-performance networking, but we also offer cloud solutions, support for researchers, and we try to meet the core needs of the research and education community in the US. Our community includes both higher education, research institutions, government entities. We have industry partners and cultural organizations. And when we look at the reach of the Internet 2 network itself, it interconnects over 1,100 individual networks, and those networks serve tens of thousands of different institutions in the US. Next slide, please. So this is my pitch to encourage people to get involved in the ARIN community. ARIN is a very open organization. You're going to hear about different ways you can contribute to that community, and they provide critical services to all users of the internet in the U.S., Canada, and parts of the Caribbean. So these are critical services that help improve our routing security, and they also they govern the process and procedures that determine how we use, how we could sell, how we could lease some important assets that our community holds. So just the community that connects to Internet 2 holds almost $4 billion in just IP addresses. And we want to be able to use those addresses securely and protect people from borrowing them. And sometimes we might want to lease or trade or monetize those IP addresses. And this is just part of my argument for why it's important to be part of the ARIN community. All of those things are really governed by ARIN. There are many ways to participate. We'll hear about those. One way of participating is voting. So ARIN has elections for their board members, for the ARIN Advisory Council, and then there are other components and that ARIN holds elections for. And there are, within just the Internet 2 connected community, there are 1,100 organizations that could vote in the ARIN elections, but there are only 100 that are eligible to vote. And all of the 1,100 could be eligible to vote. It just takes some action on their part, and you'll hear about that during their presentation. And that's really important because last election, there were less than 1,000 votes cast in the ARIN elections. So as a community, as Richard pointed out, as it sits today, those elections are highly influenced by commercial interests. But we can represent our interests as well, and we have sufficient numbers so that we can ensure we're heard in the election process. So again, thanks. I think that's it for me.
Hello again.
Joe, there you go.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Richard. And thanks, Victoria. I appreciate you putting this on and inviting us to participate in all this. I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of participation, member-based, open, all that. I think you're going to see reflected in some of the material I'm about to go through. There have been other previous things like this that's a little bit more about RPKI and those I raised in terms of security. However, we're going to touch a little bit of the member-based stuff. So those who don't know, ARIN's a nonprofit, member-based organization. The emphasis is on member. It could almost be bolded. We do nothing, insane. We administer IP addresses and ASNs and support the operation and growth of the internet. We are primarily North America and a good chunk in the Caribbean. We're one of 5 global IRRs that administer these same IP number resources across the world. Next slide, Victoria. So what is our importance to the internet? I mean, one, we globally have unique AS numbers and IP address blocks, so we actually issue. We're tasked with maintaining an accurate registry. This is the who is of IP addresses and AS numbers. Without that, again, that's part of the foundational part of the internet. We take it very seriously. We also take very seriously operating routing security services, and some of that is tied in some of the membership implications, which we'll cover in a little bit. And that covers resource public key infrastructure, RPKI, which is a little more of a modern version of the IRR Internet Routing Registry that was previous. And there are resources that cover a lot of those things, and we'll be happy to share that offline or after the call. Victoria, if you need that, we can accommodate that. Managing reverse DNS delegation, DNS security, DNSSEC access, and facilitating the ARIN policy development process. That was part of that kind of participating in the policies and processes of the internet. Facilitate is probably the word to focus on there. We're not making the policy, we're facilitating the policy. We have dedicated staff, we advisory councils that are elected members and volunteers of the community that participate in bringing ideas to, shepherding them through, and then these things are actually put up in meetings where they're voted on and contributed to by the community. So they are as much a reflection of the community as anything we're doing to facilitate it. Next slide. So what are kind of key points about ARIN? We operate for the public good. That's kind of, we think about that every day. And we provide critical infrastructure services. Our fees, we strive to base them as close as we can on cost recovery. And again, that's the nonprofit nature that we hold. And really our purpose is to provide internet number resources to the community in accordance with the community policy that was referenced prior as part of that policy development process. And to never take those resources away. Some stuff is what we call legacy or not being under agreement. And that's a certain percentage. We're not interested in doing that. We're really here fostering data accuracy in the internet, ensuring everybody has a level playing field. One of the items that I think Steve kind of referred to is talking about some of the registration agreements that we've been working on, especially with Internet 2 and Canary to a degree last year. And that's all about entering into a written agreement with ARIN. Some key points that people need to kind of keep in mind with that is it, in essence, secures your rights to resources you use. It enables you to use our full suite of services. That includes RPKI and IRR. It makes resource management transfers easier. If you're under an agreement, you've been vetted, you're a valid organization, it's kind of required to do that. That's a big part of the internet today and a lot of what we facilitate. And maybe not most importantly, but a key aspect of that, and one we'll cover here, is it allows you to participate in ARIN's governance. With, in this case, that is voting. Next slide. Policy and governance. Well, next slide. So policy and participation. Again, participation is emphasized. We rely on a community-driven, open, and transparent policy development process. Again, to regulate how we manage the distribution of internet number resources. And those aren't just words. I mean, we live by them. Any meeting you come to, you see this is very transparent. We have multiple mailing lists where people discuss these. We do consultations for ideas that come forth. The policy process itself is shepherded by the advisory council with internal staff support. And again, we're facilitating, and it's all about being community driven, open, and transparent. So there's a number of ways and opportunities to get involved and take part in this process, whether you're interested in internet governance, policy development, or just shaping the way ARIN serves its community. The policy development process, I kind of touched on already, but we identify policy issues. And when I say we, it's more the collective community through the AC or people submitting into a suggestion process we have on our website, bringing stuff more formally to AC members or other identified folks in meetings. Those are then taken and made into draft proposals in essence and shepherded through. If there's discussion and refinement of text, if it's a policy, if it's editorial in nature, that kind of gets shepherded through. And eventually there may be approval and implementation. Not all things that are identified as policy issues make it through that, because again, there's a lot of community-driven, open and transparent dialogue with a lot of this that goes through. So one of the areas on the left for folks to know, I know it's not hot linkable from here, but there are in a number of these slides a URL, which will have more information on the, in this case, the ARIN policy development process. So if you go to arin.net/webinars, there's a lot of material there you could click on to learn a little bit more about the process. Next slide. So ways to participate. And I think Steve and Richard kind of like touched on this earlier. There's a number of ways to do so. You can subscribe to and join discussions on the public policy mailing list. There's a change log in the number resource policy manual, the NRPM, to see what new policies have been implemented. That's a really good resource to kind of scale back through the history of what's changed, what's pending. You can discuss draft policies and proposals at the ARIN public policy meetings. So in that previous workflow on the previous slide, all that stuff that's ready to be kind of put forth to be officially adopted is discussed openly at these meetings. And that's an open meeting, open mic. It's the last chance or a chance to come in for anybody in the community that maybe wasn't paying as much attention, wasn't on the public policy mailing list, an opportunity to contribute to those discussions to affect the end state policy. And again, the archive shows complete information concerning previous policy proposals. That's available also. And again, the link is over on the left-hand side. Next slide. So this is something I know we wanted to touch on. At NANOG 89 in October, John Kearns, who is our president and CEO, gave a background on the history of internet governance and how operators have historically participated in this process. So he kind of shared with the community in his view, and really it's not something that I can reproduce this. This is why there's a link on there. I don't know, Victoria, I presume this is kind of distributed afterwards. This is a really good watch to go look at, but he really emphasizes what's at stake for the potential economic, security, and human impact for internet governance, and really kind of thrown out there a call to action for the community to get ahead of things that may be coming in the future versus waiting for these mandates to come down that potentially could impact policy and have other implications with the FCC and other regulators. So I was intrigued. I was there in person. It was very interesting to watch. I would not even try to reproduce it here, with the exception of like just encouraging you to go look at that. It's very interesting, and it might help spurring on, again, the need for getting involved. Next slide. And now it's all about being active community members. The question is, how can we do this? Next slide. Okay. So ARIN membership, they're broken into two items. Service members are organizations that have a signed ARIN agreement, and IPv4, v6, or autonomous system numbers. Service members were actually put into place in 2022. We did a fee schedule change, which gave a lot more organizations opportunities to be a member and have access to voting rights. Prior to that point, we only had general members. So that was a much smaller number at that part. So we really adopted and harmonized and brought a lot more service members that had this into the fray. General members is a slightly different flavor on service members. So you could say that all members are service members, and then there's a bit of an upgrade. General members are ones that where governance is important, which I think is a lot about what we're talking about in this call. And any service member can elect to become a general member. You just need to express a commitment to participate in the ARIN election cycle at least once every 3 years to maintain that status. As of 16 February, you see about 23,000 and change service members, a little under 2,000 general members. That last part about the general members must express a commitment, we actually just did. So if one does not elect to vote and participate in the process in a 3-year period within the previous 3 years, they're actually reallocated and reclassified back down to service members. In fact, going into this election just this past time around, we had about 6,000, 7,000 general members. And because of that number of folks who did not participate, they were moved down. Very transparent. Again, we explained the process, and it said exactly what you need to do to instantly come back and apply and get back and to be a general member to participate in the voting. But I think to Steve's points and others earlier, that's a smaller number, right? And so these are the people eligible to vote. This is not we're talking global, North America, a lot of the Caribbean, and this is not a lot of folks with the influence to impact policy, impact the volunteers who provide the strategic direction to ARIN and the community. Next slide. So the question here is how. So we didn't want to just give words to this. So for those of you who might wonder, am I a service member? Am I a general member? What am I? I'm really interested in participating. If you were to log into your ARIN online account, this is the slide you'll see. On the left-hand side, you'll see your records. If you go to organizational identifiers, you'll see that middle bullet of membership. If it says general member, you're good. If it says service member and you'd like to become a general member, and all this is just opting in, if you hit the actions menu, there's a request general membership 4 items down. And that's really all it takes. And you'll check a box on that, and then you'll be a general member. You'll designate a voting contact, and then you'll be able to vote in the next election. Next slide. So I guess that begs the question. We know how you do it. We know what makes you eligible to do it. So why do it? Really, we kind of look at this as a vital community responsibility that'll help direct our governance, the development of Internet Number Resource Policy, which has broad implications, not only for policy, but foundational elements of the internet and how it works. So what are you doing by voting? And being a general member? You're shaping the future. You're fostering inclusivity. You're protecting a global resource. These are like really a lot of the 3 pillars we know as we go through our daily lives in a nonprofit, as a number of us do, that really kind of gets us through the day and is a little bit of a guiding light for that. So if these things motivate you, it's all the more reason to become a general member, and it's as easy as we demonstrated and actually participate. Next slide. So this is a little bit of kind of what's going to be happening. The 2024 election slate, there's a board of trustees. So they kind of maintain authority over the scope and mission of ARIN, and they establish strategic direction and fiscal oversight. There's 3 full-time open seats year over year for that. We also have a step onto the side as the ARIN Advisory Council, or AC. They're the ones shepherding the policy proposals. For board ratification would happen after the meeting, after it gets to that approval state, after the community and the open involvement. They have 5 full-term open seats. So there's approximately 15 of those on there, and that'll be coming up this fall in the election. There's another resource organization member council. There's 1 elected representative from the ARIN region that is part of that. So these are all things that between the board of trustees, the advisory council, and the NRONC, you as what could be a significant block of voting could influence and actually make a difference. I think that's some of the key takeaways for this. And these are the areas where you could make that difference. And this is the type of work that they're responsible for scoping out. Next slide. So the next question is, what is the timeline? So we're very early in the timeline. The good news here is that there's plenty of time to determine what your member status is, your interest level in becoming a general member, and your interest level in governance, aka voting. So we're just going to be in the spring calling for the nomination of committee volunteers. This summer we'll call for nominations for the board of trustees, the AC, and the NRO number council. Those are self-nominated, so anybody can nominate themselves for that. And then they're going through a process for a little preliminary vetting to go on to the eventual ballot. In the fall, we'll publicize the candidate slate and the voting period will open. It's important to get, if you want to be a general member, have that at least probably like 90 days to 2 months ahead of the election, just to make sure you have everything in place for your voting members, for your voting contact, that sort of thing. And again, there's additional information in here that you might be interested in watching at the Leadership Development Program videos. And again, all you need to do is be an ARIN organization as a general member and have a designated voting contact. That's a key part. But the designated voting contact is part of the onboarding process for actually choosing and selecting to be a general member. But it would be worth doing if you are interested in doing that, also coming into the system and ensuring that your designated voting contact is still an active employee, is still able to perform those duties. Next slide. So we're a little bit past that section. We do a number of other things here. So we have programs and industry outreach, which this is obviously a notable part of that. Next slide. So there's a number of items, and Amanda Golden, our community programs manager, is on here, and she runs a lot of these day to day. We have a community grant program, highly successful. I've been here about 4 years, and it's kind of thrilling to see some of the initiatives that are coming through this and to be able to provide this kind of support to some of the smaller players via grants that might not have otherwise been able to be supported for that. So we do provide financial grants and supportive initiatives really to improve the overall internet industry and internet user environment. There's 4 categories the projects must fit into. And that's 1, internet technical improvements, registry processes and improvements. And you're thinking a little bit about policy there. Informational outreach, that could be about IPv6, the expansion thereof, RPKI, et cetera, and any research related to ARIN's mission and operations. So you can tell those are a little bit broad. On our website, we have more information that you can kind of whittle down on that. But really, the application process is pretty easy. And there's a lot of back and forth in that case with Amanda if you were to apply for a grant, to ask questions, to get some clarity, to get a little bit of direction on doing that. So this is something I would highly recommend. We've been doing it for a number of years, and it's something we're really proud to do for the community. Next slide. So then we have is a fellowship program. So we have a public policy meeting twice a year, in the fall and the spring. We have one coming up in April in Barbados, and we're up in Canada. I'm not occurring to me right now where that is again, but that's in the fall. Each one of these, we take a number of fellows into a program to apply for. So really, this is an interactive learning opportunity for individuals interested in learning more about ARIN, Internet Number Resource Policy Development, Internet Governance. It could be more about the inner workings of how our services. It's a little bit all the above. It is a multi-week program. So it's both before and during an ARIN public policy members meeting. So there is a bit of a commitment involved with that, but we get a lot of really great feedback from people and what they're getting out of that. So the fellows who are accepted into the program, they get an in-depth introduction to ARIN, the organization, the policy development process, and they also are teamed up with mentors. So we have senior mentors. They could be on staff. Traditionally, they're on the advisory council So a lot of this is kind of really around the policy part. And it might be a 1-to-5 ratio who helps shepherd them through. We'll meet one-on-one, help explain the process, and then physically we'll meet with them at the actual meeting. So we think it's been extremely beneficial. We've had a number of folks just in the last one give a lot of positive feedback about it. They're up at the mic when we're talking about some of the policy, which is really thrilling for some of us to see that it's kind of going in that direction. And post-COVID, it's been really nice to get this out of the virtual realm and into the on-site. We think a lot of people get a lot of things out of that. So definitely advocate folks are interested in applying for, involved with, or know people who might be involved. It opens in July, so there's enough time to kind of to determine those decisions to move forward with that. And we're happy to help provide more information on that. Next slide, please. So we have a few other programs we put in place. One is qualified facilitators. And the question is, do you have questions or challenges with address space? We know that navigating the transfer market is challenging, especially for a lot of the smaller players. Again, we are facilitators of the process, but we are aware enough of it. We deal with enough of the customers. We know that's challenging. So basically, we had a STLS program prior that we retired about a year ago in favor of this qualified facilitator program. So while the last bullet is like no one's required to use them, they have actually put in place a code of conduct, a rigorous application process. It is not easy to go through this. It ends with a very challenging interview with our general counsel and chief customer officer. So the idea of that is we've done enough vetting for a much smaller list of what we call qualified facilitators that you can have confidence in using them to help steward you through the process of transfers. And they're on our website. If you look for qualified facilitators, they'll have the list. We've only have 9, so it's a pretty select list, and we have experience working with them. So definitely encourage you, if you have questions, to feel free to access that list. There's a number of contact information on there, so you can kind of do some industry research and decide who you may or may not want to source from that list to get help. Next slide, please. So there's a number of ways for community involvement. We kind of touched a lot on these, but some of these not so much. There's very much more informal. So just generally feedback wise, throughout the year, we do surveys. Every 3 years, we do a community survey, which we did just in the previous past year, so it won't be happening for another 2 years. Very frequently, we're doing community consultations and suggestions. So there are mailing lists that you can sign up for to become aware of these. When these go out, we are posting announcements on our website, so those are out there. We have blogs that come out at the same time for staying informed, and a lot of those will go hand in hand with some of the consultation subjects. We obviously have the mailing list I've mentioned, and we have a lot of social media presence on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. That if you're interested, definitely follow us and you'll get abreast of the latest news. Volunteering opportunities, we have committee opportunities, the grant program, the fellowship committee. That's something I kind of left out. We have the committee that makes a selection on both of those. There's a community representation for that. So if there's 4 or 5, grant, committee members, 1 or 2 of those are from the community. Sometimes it's challenging to get people to do that. So definitely advocate across the internet too and Canary community. If folks are interested in doing that, reach out to myself, Amanda, others. We definitely like to have you as part of that. It's definitely helpful to get that additional perspective when making the selection. Education, webinars we have out there, training videos, in-person training, kind of a little bit of this. We do a lot of that ad hoc. We're happy to do just as much as this webinar. We'll do RPKI, RIR, membership based. Just reach out to us, ask, and we're happy to kind of coordinate. We come to a lot of location information for help desk. We'll get to that in a minute, but we're there for that. We're actually onboarding an e-learning LMS, learning management system, this quarter into next quarter, and are looking at kind of hosting e-learning as more of a course concept and even introducing certification around RPKI and IRR. Some of that is still kind of in flux, but just keep an eye out for that. That will be something that might aid your community also. Participation, we've covered, but obviously the voting is a huge part of it. Just attending public policy and members meetings is a huge part of it. Applying for fellowship or grant programs is a huge part. That and just coming out, that and just being on this meeting today is very thrilling for us to know that in and of itself is a level of participation. Next slide, please. So power by participation sounds, that's kind of one of our buzzwords, but it is the theme of what you've heard. Number of events we have. Now, this is not the outreach events where we go to, but ARIN 53 is this April. That's in Bridgetown, Barbados. I know you're all chomping at the bit to go there. Then we have a number of ARIN on the roads where we have a few select cities we will come to. Geographically, we identify customers in that area, and we try to do our best to solicit invitations to them and other types of contacts we might have there. So this year we'll be in Reno, Kansas City, and then Ottawa sometime in September. We don't have a date kind of locked down for that. And then, of course, next October, it's Toronto. That's what I was forgetting before, up in Canada. And that is in conjunction with NANOG. So every fall, we do this in a little bit in conjunction with NANOG. They choose a location. So if anybody doesn't like the Toronto location, it's not us. We picked the Barbados, NANOG picked Toronto. So take that as you will. And again, all of our meetings, keep in mind, this can be in person or it's virtual. You can register to go there in person and participate. It's also available virtually. We welcome any kind of participation in that space. Next slide, please. So the other half of this, that's kind of the stuff we go and pay for and do. This is the industry outreach. This is a little bit reflective of places we were at last year, and which will be a duplication this year and more. So we're at CES. We're talking WISP America, CanWISP, Scale, FISPA, NANOG, CanHeight, Wispalooza. I mean, we're up in Canary Summit. We'll be at the next one for that. So this reflects about a third of all the places we've been. So I think John Sweeting is probably listening to this call. He does a lot of travel with John Worley. You'll see them at help desks doing presentations at these meetings, working with you on detailed questions. Brad Gorman's an RPKI individual. So we make a lot of effort to get integrated with you all and gain attendance to these, set up a help desk, provide an overview such as this, a presentation, kind of whatever's needed to extend the outreach and embrace on the participation. We're definitely here for you with that. Next slide, please. So this is the boring stuff, how to reach us. So ARIN does have a help desk that is open via voice, 7 a.m. to 7. We have a limited duration of the day for chat. It's a Monday through Friday. Sorry, it's not 24/7. It is Monday through Friday. We have an Ask ARIN feature, which is something that when you're logged into your account, you can have a more generalized question. If it's not a specific resource request, like I want to do a transfer, I want an IPv4, request or v6 or ASN, it's more generalized. When you go in, you'll see that Ask ARIN, and there's a number of topics you can pick around agreements, around billing, and other. So we monitor that on a daily basis, and that's triaged by our RSD team. We have feedback buttons, report service issues, all over our website. You can't miss them. They're on every page, for better or for worse. But we have people on the other end that are monitoring all those different intakes. We also have a billing support help desk. They're open from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. So again, on the ARIN website, there's a contact us link on the bottom, and it has a very detailed list of all these with the contact numbers, email addresses, etc. So we try to make it as easy as possible to get a hold of us. Next slide. And I think that's it. We're at Q&A. I think before any Q&A, Victoria, I just want to kind of extend ARIN's heartfelt thanks for having us on here. We are hoping this is helpful. Again, thrilled to do it and looking forward to participating not only in events, ARIN on the road, and meetings where hopefully you all can participate, but also coming out more to the regional folks and some of those outreach items that I mentioned before that was on that one slide. So thank you very much for having us.
So I'd like to make a comment, Joe, on one of the things that you brought up. I believe it's the case. I know it's the case in Internet 2, and I think it's generally the case both in Canary and Internet 2 that most of our membership are service members. They may not have their legacy space covered by an agreement, but if they have v6 space or ASNs, what we find is most all of them have an agreement for some resource. Yep. And so they're service members. And so I just wanted to encourage folks, they may be one step away from being general members and being able to vote, even if they have legacy addresses that aren't currently under an agreement.
No, that's a great point, because to your point, you could have a single ASN under agreement and a number of V4, V6 resources not. That makes you a service member, regardless of what you do with the other aspects of it. So even with just that one part, that gets you eligibility to become a general member. And that, we didn't have it on here, but we had a completion of that, of what we call the fee harmonization that began in 2022, where we moved ASN only members with an agreement to become service members. That was just effective the first of this year. So we're barely like 2 months into that. That opened up a whole lot more folks, which is where you had that 23,000 and change service members now. So that might become, and we sent out a lot of communications, but that might come as a surprise to folks who might not realize this. So a single ASN under agreement, regardless of your V4, V6 resources being under agreement or not being under agreement, actually has you eligible to be a service member and subsequently a general member and participate in everything we're talking about today. Any other questions, Victoria, or?
It doesn't seem like we have anything coming in at the moment. But again, everyone's encouraged to share questions via email as well. These slide decks will be shared and the contact info will be shared afterwards as well. But yeah, if there's any last call for questions, if needed.
Well, I do want to say thanks, Joe and Steve, for setting this up, and thanks for everyone that you've joined and participated here. I've grabbed a few slides out of this deck for ourselves, specifically there's new information to me, the different status between a service member and general membership. So you've done some good for us. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thanks, Richard.
Yep, thanks, Joe.
All right, well, I'll wrap this up for now if everyone's okay with that, and wishing everyone a great day.
All right. Bye, everybody.